Hi, my name is Alexandra Hindson, and I am a clarity coach working with professionals and entrepreneurs who are seeking greater clarity in their lives, and an ADHD coach who works with entrepreneurs and professionals who are struggling with difficult ADHD symptoms. The program is called Awaken, Rewire, and Reclaim Your ADHD Superpowers. Today, I wanted to share with you a presentation I did on uncovering root causes of ADHD and a new program that I'm offering. Just going to share my screen. So, I want to share a little bit about my Awaken program and the step-by-step process to liberate and empower yourself, but today focus on root causes. So, I think many of us can relate to the monkey mind. I would suggest that diagnosis of ADHD is very different than those who are experiencing difficult-like symptoms of distractibility, often due to many distractions in their environment that we're seeing in our current society. So an ADHD diagnosis is a little bit more severe. So we're going to be addressing that, those particular symptoms. And so today's presentation is really about empowering you with new information. It may not be new, some of it might be. So knowledge is power. And according to Ned Hallowell, who's an American ADHD expert and psychiatrist, well known in the community, he stresses the imperative education and support. I just want to just really emphasize this, that individuals with ADHD must never worry alone. Supportive communities, informed professionals, and coaches serve as really essential mirrors and guides, helping them to navigate their experience. He also emphasizes the importance of connection over isolation. And this is so key in helping us overcome addiction, which is really the result of an isolated, punitive approach that society currently uses with ADHD. My story. So I was probably an undiagnosed ADD young woman who lived for decades without a formal diagnosis, but struggled to really get my act together. I was a person of great ideas, so I was living off of the fuel of the adrenaline of new experiences. And one of those ways I did that was starting up new businesses, new projects. And so one of them was I was a consultant, a biotech consultant for new companies in the Okanagan and West Coast who were setting up new greenhouses, et cetera, helping them set up their facilities for biotech addition. So at one point, I found myself like this because I was doing so many different projects, trying to manage them and not doing a very good job of it because I had poor organizational skills, poor planning, time management, etc. And as a result, I finally burned out, sadly, and was left with depression and anxiety. That plus the threat of a fax from a client in the Okanagan threatening to sue me for not following through with our agreements, my contract, and the trust was broken with him. This was the big wake-up call for me to start taking some action and finding out what's really going on here. And this was after a series of failures that finally got me to take action. So I started looking for solutions. And following the map led me to what was for me, doesn't mean it's necessarily for everyone, was yoga. And yoga I describe as the science of the self, mind-body connection, building that bridge to grounding ourselves, grounding myself, learning to ground my nervous system and regulate, and learning how to manage my mind that was a little bit out of control. And so yoga does this through various practices that I teach in my Awaken program. One of them, of course, being the breath. After spending 3 months intensive, immersive in a yoga development course at this yoga retreat center, and a year of practicing the tools, like really working them, I came out, and this is a more recent photograph, but it really exemplifies how I emerged. I emerged, what I would say, with a transformation. Instead of that figure with the multi arms who's overwhelmed by trying to manage many projects, I actually became skilled, masterful in managing different hats. I had 5 different jobs as I transitioned out of this 1 year retreat into the city of Calgary and found myself managing and successfully just um, just successfully living my life in a new way while having a life that was fulfilling, doing the things that I love doing best. More recently, I have written a book called The Law of Clarity, A Journey of Self-Mastery, which outlines the steps that I took in this transformational process, which I believe is now science-backed, and gives you what I would say is a proven process. Well, from my own experience, but also with the science to support it. So let's just look quickly at here what is ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity, and it's called a disorder. Today's talk is really about really gleaning out the superpowers and then helping you uncover the root cause and get to the source and start working with the root cause, and then managing the more difficult symptoms. What I had literally done was transformed the difficult symptoms into uh, practices and tools that could help me really soar into the potentiality of the attention deficit that I suspect I had. But again, please note, there can be many causes to these kinds of symptoms. Classic symptoms are impulsivity, inattention, problems with regulating self. This is a classic image of a young boy, but you'll notice he has some strengths. He is able to multitask, and he's joyful in doing all of it. So, but some of these symptoms do have very difficult consequences. So, procrastination and low motivation are a result of low dopamine. Anger and frustration, that dysregulation that comes with the nervous system that is overwhelmed by anxiety. Overwhelm and anxiety, of course, obvious here. Addiction is a very difficult symptom, and the tuning out, which is tuning out of our emotions, which some might say is actually one of the root causes of these more difficult symptoms above. Low tolerance for boredom, problems making decisions. And for women, often is the case, but also in men, is this mask of perfection where we're going through life pedaling like crazy underneath the water that people can't see and trying to keep a happy face on the surface, just as you can see in this image. Well, what are the superpowers? Well, typically, ADHD people are known to be highly creative. They develop an incredible resilience due to the struggles that they face and overcome their struggles. Their ability to multitask, as seen in that first image. Their ability to hyper-focus on that which they're passionate about. I'd like to draw your attention to an interview I did more recently with Theo Fleury, who exemplifies all of these strengths, and resulting in his highly successful career as an NHL hockey player. Risk tolerance, thinking outside of the box, open and receptive to alternative therapies and behavioral approaches. This has been all of my experience when working with clients, students, lots of different people from different walks of life. The program that I offer, Three Keys, the Awaken program, uncovering the Awaken program, Rewire and Reclaim Your ADHD Superpower Powers, has three keys. The three keys to transforming difficult symptoms into superpowers is one, identify the root cause, which we're going to talk a bit about today, then the roadmap to recovery, and I'll give you a bit of background to that, and sustainable growth with an ongoing support in a like-minded community. So today the focus is on uncover the root cause. Now, some of the factors influencing the symptoms or the diagnosis of ADHD are that when you're diagnosed, there may be a genetic component where the attending physician or psychologist or psychiatrist will identify a genetic component. It certainly can be within the family, a parent, a grandparent, brother, sister. I often see this as the case. But I would add that it is the environment that will trigger the gene, and this is known as epigenetics. So certain factors will trigger that, and that's what we're going to talk about more today. Some of the other factors influencing ADHD and the cause of it are can be head injury, stress and trauma early in life during the first 3 years of life. It could be early neglect and abuse. It can also be a toxic exposure to a something in the environment. Often there can be a similarity of symptoms between other diseases, such as thyroid disease. And the symptoms look very, very similar. We often see too women in perimenopausal, menopausal states in their life will start exemplifying ADHD symptoms. So this can be a result of hormonal influences such as low estrogen. And then there's the cultural and societal pressures that contribute to factors influencing ADHD or the predominance, or I would like to say an epidemic is what we're seeing of ADHD in our society right now. And I think we all know what those might be, such as phone usages, but also cultural practices such as the way we're birthing babies, cesarean sections, the absence of breastfeeding can also contribute to that. So we'll talk a little bit about that here in the uncovering root cause. So we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit. So bear with me as we go into a little bit more information in uncovering root cause. Now, one of the factors involved in ADHD is that there are trends. We see patterns, and I'm very interested in pattern recognition. And one of those was that we started to see a proliferation of ADHD symptoms rising along with autism in the 1980s. And we see a relationship between, we're going to talk about the use of uh, weed killers in our farming cultures and the connection of that possibly. So remember, this is a possible connection. So I use this as a hypothesis. This is one of the hypotheses. And so I just want to just briefly go over the history of this and the role of chemical toxins in our environment that are triggering, maybe triggering ADHD symptoms. So in the 1800s, late 1800s, agricultural practices started to change. Um, and then ultimately leading into World War I and World War II, we start to see the rise of chemicals, especially during the world wars of chemical warfare. Example of that being mustard gas. We see the rise of chemical companies rising as a result of that. The years following the wars resulted in, well, what do we do with all of these petrochemicals? So all of these toxins are created using oil and gas. So it's a petrochemical use of chemicals in both our farming and then eventually used in the pharmaceutical industry. Remember, this did not exist prior to the 1900s. So, what we saw was the birth of corporate farming and medicine, resulting in number one, the Green Revolution, and number two, the allopathic medical system, which did not exist before the 1900s. The allopathic medical system really does rely upon a pharmaceutical industry to be prescribed. So these are prescribed um, medicines to address issues arising in the health of the individual. Then what we saw was the Vietnam War, where we saw once again another chemical agent known as Agent Orange made by Monsanto. It was a defoliant and used to, well, it was used throughout Vietnam to reveal the enemy below because they were hiding under a canopy of greenery. This was then reformulated as glyphosate after the Vietnam War. So Monsanto simply rebranded it, probably changed the configuration slightly, and it was used as a broad spectrum weed control agent, and then later on used as a desiccant. In the 1980s, glyphosate was used so profoundly, we started to see it in the water due to its rapid use in the farming industry, particularly as a desiccant. And at that time, so corresponding to the rise in the use of glyphosate, we see the rise in type 2 diabetes, obesity, neurodevelopment diseases such as autism, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, and more. In the 1990s, we see the rise in glyphosate particularly in wheat, used very specifically as a very effective desiccant. And we start to see the rise of gluten sensitivity. So I just want to look at the breakdown of glyphosate in the human biology. So, so the effect of glyphosate on our gut biome, our human biome, which is it's the system that we are made up predominantly of. We have more bacterial, fungal genes than we do have human genes. So we're just going to look at how glyphosate and other additives to what we call today as well known as Roundup acts as an antibiotic. So this is the key that we're spraying. Well, they're estimated there's 4 billion pounds of glyphosate spread used in the world yearly. So this is tremendous amount. So as I said, there's no wonder we're seeing it in our water systems, in our rainfall. We can't get away from it. And then in our soils. So it's water soluble. So what it does is it starts to affect the delicate. So if we have an antibiotic, so I know for anybody who has been antibiotics, you're always encouraged to go on probiotics afterwards. But we're ingesting this without knowing it. So eventually it's breaking down that delicate cellular layer around the entire colon system or the digestive system, causing cell damage. And this creates openings of the protective layer between the outer and the inner. And as a result, so whatever goes in from the outer is getting in through the blood system through leaky gut. So we have disorders, leaky gut, irritable bowel syndrome, and more that are allowing for toxins to get into the blood system, causing inflammation. So, and then it passes through the blood-brain barrier. And then as a consequence, we have chronic inflammation and the lowering of communication between cells. And a result of this poor communication between cells, we have the development of an isolated cell with no communication, which is really what has been defined as a cancer cell. So I'd like to just draw the comparison between the isolation of the inner biology and the outer world that many people are experiencing right now. What we have also is the effect of glyphosate on the mitochondria, which affects the electrical charge of the cell and which, in essence, signals it into a program of aging and death. So we know that children with autism, when their electrical charge of their cellular membranes or the cells within their body, when they're measured, they're actually similar to an aging adult. So this is very serious, and you can see this impact on the whole world in terms of chronic disease, particularly seen in the United States, where they just use so much of the glyphosate that has settled into the Mississippi Delta and is affecting all of their water systems right through the heart of the United States of America. And then, of course, the effects of glyphosate as a result of this on mental health. So the glyphosate interferes with the shikimic pathway, which in the plant of amino acid synthesis, the three amino acids affected are alanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan in plants, which will, of course, affect us. We're not getting these amino acids. And these amino acids are responsible for the neurotransmitter production: dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, melanin, thyroxine. So you can see the connection between thyroid disorders and B3 niacin and others. And we're going to talk about the role of vitamin B as a supplement to support ADHD symptoms. The result of this was we get chronic inflammation, affects the brain, resulting. So we do know that chronic inflammation throughout the body affects the brain and results in mood disorders, anxiety, depression, insomnia, and fatigue. So this is really where we get to mistake number one when it comes to diagnosing ADHD and why many people remain undiagnosed is because what we're seeing is a mental health crisis. When women, men go into the office and complain most often of anxiety and depression, they will be given a treatment, a medicine, a prescription for depression or anxiety. An example of where this can exacerbate symptoms of ADHD is I had a client who was given Paxil, which ultimately exacerbated his risk-taking symptoms, which nearly destroyed his marriage. So and this also emphasizes the use of chemical prescriptions to try to really dumb down the symptoms of ADHD, which is not getting to the root cause and which is not addressing the ADHD directly. And so this is the problem here. So we have a misuse of prescription drugs that can often happen with people who haven't been fully diagnosed and really creating havoc in the lives of these people. So let's talk about a pathway, a healing pathway. So not just dumbing down the symptoms, but how do we actually heal the difficult symptoms? Because remember, ADHD is a superpower. The difficult symptoms of anxiety and depression, as we can see, can already be addressed by doing a simple thing, even by just finding a very good vitamin B supplement. But I'm saying no, it's not just a one-prong solution, it's a multi-prong. And this is what holism means. It's a multi-prong approach to actually healing ADHD symptoms, difficult ADHD symptoms. Remember, ADHD is not the problem, it's the difficult symptoms of ADHD. So one of the areas that I work on are new when I'm working with a client is first of all uncovering the root cause. And this is what my program that I wanted to share with you. It's the one session of doing a deep dive of uncovering and providing you with some immediate strategies that you can take. But in my longer program, we look at wellness habits of nutrition, supplementation. We talk about exercise. We talk about sleep. We talk about multiple areas of that whole body approach. Just want to talk about a case study where I had a student who I was working with. First session, we just started going deep dive, trying to uncover what was really the source of her immediate problem. The immediate problem where she was a student, she had low motivation, procrastinating. She was suffering from anxiety, confusion, disorganization, couldn't get started on these important projects that were starting to build up and creating stress, resulting in anxiety and depression. We found out that she was drinking Coca-Cola every day, not water. And so the first step was, okay, let's just start with step number one. It's a simple solution. Replace the Diet Coke or the Coke or Pepsi you're using and use water and electrolytes instead. So I suggested Himalayan salt and lemon and just drinking this daily and really clearing her system. After a week, she was a different woman. She came back. She had suddenly taken control of her studies and was feeling empowered. And she went on in terms of our work together to become an A student. She wasn't she wasn't tapping her superpowers because she was doing one thing, and that was the sugar and the caffeine that was creating a cascade of difficult symptoms interfering in her success. So sugar and carbs are one of the areas that I start with when working with a client and recognizing that these are contributing to the symptoms. So we talk about that and look at ways as both an accountability support person, also as the coach, and got some more knowledge, maybe more information that I can share with you to help guide you on some maybe making some different choices in your life. And then, of course, the use of supplementation. An example of that, one example, there's many supplements that I recommend, and they're not a lot, but they're significant. And those are vitamin Bs to start. And they can actually start addressing some of the difficult ones of restlessness, forgetfulness, concentration, lack of clarity, depression, fatigue. So start with that. The other tool that I use is rewiring the brain. And so that might sound a little funny, is what I'm using is a brain balancing technology and healing frequency known as solfeggio frequencies. And it really is, it's an audio track of listening to a series of combinations of sound frequencies combined with compositions of music to give that emotional touch, and a panning, much like EMDR, which is a therapeutic tool used by psychologists to address trauma. So it is a highly effective tool in healing the brain and balancing out the left and right prefrontal cortex, which is often and considered another root cause for ADHD. This is one cause or one theory for ADHD promoted by Gabor Mate, a psychologist working in Vancouver, Canada. So in his book, Scattered Minds of 2000, he talks about that the early formation of the child's brain circuits is influenced by the mother's emotional states and determines the healthy electrical and chemical circuitry of the brain. So the right hemisphere of the mother's brain, where our unconscious emotions reside, programs the infant's right hemisphere. But if there's interference between the mother-child bonding, so if the mother is stressed, if she's not present in like fully present in her body, so that's and she's maybe not breastfeeding. So there can be all kinds of reason where that bond is interrupted or severed. So that interference with the conditions for the healthy development of the prefrontal cortex, according to Gabor Mate, accounts for virtually all cases of ADD or ADHD. So the technology that I'm using helps to balance the prefrontal cortex, the left and right hemisphere, so that they come into harmony. But when there's damage to the right prefrontal cortex as a result of a dysregulated bond between the mother and child, what we'll see are these other more subtle symptoms. Often people will digress and need to be reminded to finish a line of thought, are easily distracted. When listening, will often shift attention to whatever catches their attention. During a task, will often lose track of what the instructions were. They can be given to childish outbursts, difficult in inhibiting physical impulses, and difficulty in learning from their experiences. So the sound healing frequencies that I use, this is a testimonial from one of my clients who was experiencing a difficulty making decisions. This is one of the challenges with ADHD. And she saw such a radical change because she started dealing with the trauma of her childhood. And so she was using the ARDR to move through the repressed emotions that had been held down due to the trauma in early childhood. As a result, she said, with the help of the coaching that I gave her and the ARDR, transformation took place. So she was having trouble making decisions. And so now she's moving forward in her life with clarity and able to see her steps, the steps that she needed to take. So using executive function strategies, coaching strategies, for example, building out a step-by-step process of coming to a decision. So we work together on that, along with the ARDR, which is helping, as my other client, Carol Angelino, who said that what the ARDR did for her was also help regulate her nervous system, which was always stuck in overdrive. So it was like bringing her nervous system back into balance. So as a result, she's noticing she's more present in her body, being more present in her relationships, and building a life that is more with more clarity, control, and fulfillment. The final key of sustainability really is about building the muscle. And that is because the program works over a period of time, is we're working that muscle of repetition. We're also working with each other in a morning meditation to build um, the connection, but also to practice and work that muscle together in a community where we share our reflections, where we share our experiences together. And by working that muscle and being really clear about the root cause, we know what not to do and what to do, and to repeat it over until we have rewired the brain into a more healthy, productive life that we can move forward in. So, yeah, what is the cost of not doing anything? Do we want to keep stuck in the hamster wheel of just recreating or repeating the mistakes of the past, or do we want to make a change, a deep change of healing, and really tap the power that you ultimately have to live the fullest, most extraordinary life, which has been my experience. So, identifying the root cause of ADHD, this is my program. You can pause it here and read what we're going to be doing. So it's a deep dive. We're going to identify triggers. We're going to do a root cause exploration and do actionable insights. So that means provide tailored strategies to manage the ADHD related challenges that you have as a result of the root cause we've identified. So the root cause is a value of $350. And so it's being offered right now at $197. So within that session, and it'll be a 1 hour and a half session working with me, and then also with some follow-up handouts and we'll also provide some assessments, self-assessments that you can will help you determine some of the root causes. All of this for a 197. Now you can go to my site where you can register. So here, alexandrahindson.com, and again, just pause your recording here, go to my website and sign up. I really look forward to working with you. Thank you for listening. Please go to my website and sign up for my newsletter where you get updates, you get some tools, you get my video interviews, the one with Theo Fleury. You can go to my website to actually access that very profound interview with Theo Fleury, who talks about his own healing journey of trauma and ultimately his ADHD that ultimately led to tremendous success in his life. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to working with you in the future. I look forward to hearing from, again, you can reach out to me at actually, that's not an updated email. It's awaken@alexandrahindson.ca. Thank you for being with me. Namaste.